Okay, first, I'm using Dave Rat in the title so I can get viewers. If I just did a video of just myself talking about balanced lines, nobody watches it. So, I don't know, if you don't like that, I'm sorry, go away. But Dave has been very nice. It's just a journey. He asked in his video for comments, and we've emailed back and forth, so I don't think this is upsetting him at all. But the reason I'm back to these balanced line issue is because James Grieve sent me an email about the 32-bit float stuff, and he said, by the way, have you seen these original papers that were written on this stuff? And I hadn't, so thank you, James. And I downloaded them, read them, and they're super fascinating. They explain to me, again, I've always had a problem from the beginning. There's a lot of marketing literature that shows that the way balanced lines work is that you take the both polarities of a, let's say, a microphone signal, the positive and negative, the positive pressure, negative pressure that matches your sound, that you basically use them to you match them, and then anything left is noise and you throw it out, and that's how this stuff works. It doesn't work that way. And as Dave explained in an email to me, no, it's a transformer. So I looked up that, and yes, the transformer uses magnetism to basically isolate those two things. And in my second video, I explained, well, what happens to like the interference, like from a lightning or a motor, it goes into the ground. And so I felt, yeah, that would have improved Dave's video. So anyway, it goes into the ground, and then the more researching I'm doing, the more I'm realizing it's really the voltage going into your system, your AC voltages, that creates all kinds of problems. Anyway, so I read these papers, and this is what this video is about. And again, I'm explaining stuff again because every time I do it, I try and explain to understand more myself, and hopefully it understands you. And if you're an electrical engineer or whatever, or you're just a hobbyist like me and you think I'm wrong, please put it in the comments. If you're trolling, you don't like I'm mentioning Dave Rat, complain there too. Like a lot of people hated my Rick Beato video, right? Because I used his name. Like, gotta get, this is never going to be like a channel I make money from, okay? So, easy now. All right, on to the fun stuff with balanced lines. If we go to the IEEE Standards Association and we search unbalanced line, we're not going to get a single definition because there is no single definition. There's a definition that we have for, power lines, for analog lines, for microphones, for microwaves, for all this, for Ethernet, for network. Each of them has considerations about what they mean by a balanced line. And let me just go over again. I just want to point this out. If you go to the IEE, there's no like one definition of balanced lines. And as I said before, there's no really such thing as balanced cables. I mean, the balanced lines is a very generalized topic. So the generalized goal is that whatever your source energy, you want it to equal the energy that you receive at your target. You want those to be balanced because essentially you're always going to scale them. And so one of the confusions I have with Dave Rat's videos, he was really talking about this sort of balanced line between his PA equipment and speakers. And I was thinking more about the microphones balanced lines. And again, they're all sort of have similar issues in getting a balanced line, but each one have different gremlins or different priorities or different. Some problems are greater than others. For instance, in electrical transmission, we're only interested in the power received. So if there's a solar flare or Carrington event, the question is we don't want so much power coming into our toaster or our TV that's going to blow it out. That isn't what it's expected. So we want what our power company thinks they're sending us, we want to receive in our TV. We don't want the sun to interfere and blow out that relationship. And so in network stuff, again, it's more of a signal type issue. But anyway, I just want to show you, this is the goal of a balanced line, but the lines are different. So for instance, the microphone, you're talking about millivolts, right? So it's like 2 to 100 millivolts of voltage. In a PA system, Dave Rat would know more than I do, but I'm sure it's 12 volts, 5 volts, whatever. It's a lot of voltage, right? And in microwaves, you're talking about a completely different magnetic radiation. And then, of course, you're dealing with the antennas and what goes through it. So each one of these has a different problem in balancing. Again, you're balancing what you're sending and what you're expecting, and you want them to be equal. And the culprit of all this this stuff is are these things essentially. And I just put a bunch of gremlins up here. So these are the enemies of a balanced line. And so power line AC fields, right? If Dave Ratt's situation, if he has a bunch of power lines or AC fields near his equipment, and that magnetic field or electric field interferes with that, then it's going to receive voltages that he did not send, and they'll come up as static or humming or interference. So that's a huge problem in PA type stuff. All the hum, switching supply noise, because again, all these things have power supplies. And that's sort of what we have to remember, is that in any system, we have to get energy elsewhere to drive what we want to do. And that energy, as soon as it gets into the system, can create artifacts, right? It can affect the lines, it can create false magnetic fields, it can just change the balance. As soon as you add another energy source, you are adding another potential to unbalance your lines. So again, I go through all these situations. So like a solar cosmic radiation, that would be big in with power lines. Like I said, a Carrington event would really affect this, but we don't really worry about that with microphones. And the same thing, radio frequency interference. My guess is yes, that has stuff to do with, could affect Ethernet or microwave, but it doesn't really have much to do, again, with microphones or probably even PAs. Same thing with broadcast transmitters. So each of these gremlins, each of these external forces or internal problems that can affect a balanced line between your two devices or whatever, or your two, whatever you want to call it, these are all the enemies. Okay, before we get into Bill Whitlock's white paper that he wrote back in 1994, let's put that time period in perspective. In 1993, for example, if you want to buy a digital audio recorder, they were, $10,000, which in today's money. So think about that, how expensive that was. And they used tapes. You had to go backwards and forward. Basically, a Hi8, Sony Hi8 tape would go in here, and then Alessa had one where you used VHS. And even if with one of those, you still needed a mic preamp. So like a Neve, these Neves were like $1,000, $2,000 back then. And today, like a vintage one for back, it's like $20,000, which cracks me up because I'm sure tons of these were thrown in dumpsters, right, way back in the day when those old recording studios would, be demolished. So anyway, yeah, that's just funny. But say, who says analog's dead? $20,000, wow. But today, you can get the latest Behringer 8-channel with preamps is $150. So $150 plus any laptop computer or desktop computer, and you have what cost $25,000 back at the time this paper was written if you bought the digital recorder plus the mic preamps. And today you don't need to wait for the tape to rewind or fast forward. So really, things have so drastically changed. So we need to put that paper in perspective. Like he doesn't even mention digital in the paper. So anyway, yeah, sorry. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's go on to the paper. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting stuff in this paper. And the paper also confirms, what I've been learning since then. And I'm not going to go into it. I'm actually going to try and avoid all this stuff, but it is interesting that he talks about much of the stuff that I'm talking about. Anyway, one interesting thing that's in the paper is he lists the IE dictionary defines as a balanced line. I pointed out before. I don't know where he got this from, but a transmission line consisting of two single or two interconnected groups of conductors. Now, conductors, he's basically meaning the devices. So in the microphone instance, we'd be talking about, let's say, the microphone and the audio interface of the preamp, capable of being, and for Dave Ratt, it would be the mixing board and the speaker system, let's just say. Conductors capable of being operated in such a way that the voltages of two groups of conductors at any transverse plane are equal in magnitude and opposite in polarity with respect to ground. So when you get a microphone input and you're getting the voltage, which goes negative and positive, that it's going to be equal going into the preamp as it is coming from the mic, or coming out of the preamp, I should say. and the total currents along the two groups of conductors are equal in magnitude in opposite direction. Right, opposite direction is very important. And then he goes on. He shows us now. See, there's no digital stuff here. He's just explaining the problem, which is what I felt like Dave left out of his video in a sense, in that he's talking about here's the utility, ground essentially. Here's the voltage going into it and the voltage chassis, and this is the basic problem that's affecting the balanced line, like what you want to get out of it. And today, many people just sort of forget that's actually, that there is like another circuit, like that's impinging on your circuit that you're doing the audio processing with. Anyway, he does that. And then then, above he says the IE dictionary defines a differential amplifier as an amplifier that produces an output in response to a potential difference between its input terminals, differential mode signal, and in which outputs from common mode interference voltages on its input signals are suppressed. Now, this is really important. Note that since a transformer has intrinsic differential response, any amplifier preceded by a transformer also becomes a differential amplifier. And again, this was, I think, left out of many videos that talk about this. Transformer, which is often called a choke transformer, works because you take a voltage. So if you take a voltage from some line, right, from a microphone, let's just say, and you put it through essentially a transformer, a choke, when the wires are on one end will create this magnetic field that will convert into an electrical current on the other end that goes into the preamp, or you can use these anywhere, right? And because like any static electricity or a lightning bolt or any interference that comes into the line does not share the same ground, right? Has a different ground. It won't pass through that magnetic field. That's how they're separated. And so I notice this a lot in stuff I read today, that people talk about differential amplifiers with this idea that there's something more different about them than having that transformer. And there may be. There are many different ways of making that sort of like that theoretically pure differential amplifier. But here he's basically just saying, like, I'm just really just talking about an amplifier with a transformer. Okay. So this is where I feel that many people over the years, I think many people read this, and over the years, other people keep repeating it. And I think they're distorting what he's saying. I think he did not say this clearly enough. And I don't know if he reads this or sees this, maybe he'll agree or disagree, but I think that people took him out of context. Anyway, and so I'm going to read this. It's going to be a little bit long. I'm sorry. Anyway, he says, if we connect a wire to one output of device A, we will see with respect to local ground, the audience reference polarity signal plus the ground noise. So again, Dave Rat went into this. When you take, let's say, a microphone, it's going positive, negative, back and forth on the wire. So you're going to get that voltage plus any ground noise, any noise that's gotten into the wire, or you rub the microphone and static electricity, however it's gotten in there, that's what you're going to get. Or in any circuit, it doesn't have to be a microphone, any sort of analog voltage, you're going to get whatever your source signal is. It could be a guitar, microphone, whatever, plus any sort of interference. As we shall see, with respect to local ground, the audio signal of opposite polarity plus the ground noise. Okay. So now he says, all we have to do is subtract the voltage on the second wire from the voltage on the first, which completely cancels the ground noise and effectively adds the two audio signals. And this is sort of what Dave Rat said, is the subtractor inputs have infinite input impedances, the scheme is perfect. But this is theoretical. There's no such thing that I know about as a subtractor. Like, there's no component that subtracts the voltage on a second wire from the voltage of the first. What he's really talking about is the theoretical idea of separating that voltages, which he talks about above with the choke transformer, right? You use the transformer, it removes that. And so when he's saying subtract the voltage in the second wire from the first wire, I don't think that's right. I don't think anything does that. And if it does, you need to tell me what this subtractor is out there. Okay. He says, in reality, however, device A will have output impedances greater than 0, and device B will have input impedances less than infinity. So what he's basically saying is the impedances between the microphone, let's just say, or guitar, anything, and your target, your B device, is always going to be a little bit different. So you're going to have, right away, you're going to have like a little voltage problem here, right? So how are you going to reject noise where you already have this voltage problem? And he says, in engineering terms, the subtractor provides common mode rejection. But again, its subtractor is just, it's a theoretical concept he's putting in his head because this is early on, 1995, right? So the ratio of the differential of normal mode signal gain to the common mode ground noise gain of the subtractor is a common mode rejection ratio. Again, he's not talking about a specific component of a subtractor. He's just basically theoretically trying to pull it apart. And then he talks about an excellent treatment in this way. Okay, so he says, the common mode rejection ratio will be an infinite as long as the common mode voltage, the inputs of our perfect subtractor are equally equal. And this is the hint to me that tells me that he's not talking about a real electrical component subtractor, theoretical, because he says the inputs of our perfect subtractor are exactly equal. There's no subtractor. He's using perfect to say, listen, by the way, we're talking theoretical of what we want to do, how we want to subtract the common mode noise from our signal, right? And then this is, again, Dave Rat and others have done this, and I don't think he's talking to be theoretical. So he says, it is not necessary to have equal amplitude and opposite polarity signals in this ideal scheme. When subtracted, the asymmetrical signals, +1, -0, or 0, -1, will produce exactly the same output as symmetrical signals, +5, -. Signal symmetry is a practical consideration we will focus in on chapter 6. But I think he's just doing theory. But people since then have basically showed these diagrams, which have gone into other videos where they show the two ways and say, oh, we subtract them, the negative and the positive, and then whatever's left is noise and we throw it out. In theory, I mean, that's what he's saying, but there's no electrical component that does that, except, again, a transformer, which uses magnetism to do it.